In the brutal heart of a forgotten war, a legend was born not of men, but of a beast. Deep within the snow-covered forests, a massive bear rose to defend the land it called home. What began as a soldier's myth soon became a tale whispered across battlefields of the creature that defied bullets, tore through ranks, and became known forever as the bear that fought an army. In the shadow of snow-capped mountains, there was a forest that no soldier dared to cross. The villagers whispered that the woods were guarded by a creature of immense power, a bear so large and fierce that even the wolves gave way to its path. Yet this was not a creature born of myth. Deep within those trees lived a real beast, a grizzly known by the few who had seen it as Voran. Voran had grown from a cub rescued by soldiers long ago, men who had once stumbled across him in a burned-out forest after a lightning storm. They had fed him, raised him, and marched with him across lands scarred by war. He had learned their sounds, their laughter, their rhythm. But when those men were gone, when the war took them, he returned to the wilderness, stronger, scarred, and strangely human in spirit. Years passed, and the Empire's borders shifted once again. A new army came marching north, clearing forests to build their camps and burning villages in their path. The wind carried the scent of ash and blood through the valleys and to Voran's cave. The forest that had once been his home began to vanish under the boots of soldiers. He could hear their axes echoing through the hills, the cries of animals driven from their dens. It began as instinct, a bear's rage, pure and territorial. But something deeper stirred in Voran, something ancient and purposeful. He began to track the intruders, moving silently through the pines, watching from the shadows. When a patrol wandered too far into the heart of the forest, they never returned. The survivors spoke of eyes glowing like embers in the mist and roars that shook the trees themselves. Soon, the army knew his name, the Beast of the North. But they did not yet know what they had awakened. As winter thickened and the forest grew silent, Voran watched the army gather by the river, their torches flickering like a line of fire. The time for watching had ended. The forest would not fall quietly. Snow had fallen through the night, blanketing the forest in a ghostly silence. Beneath that calm, however, an invisible war was brewing. The soldiers had fortified their camp at the edge of the river, convinced they could hunt down the Beast of the North. They had built walls of sharpened stakes, set traps deep in the woods, and posted guards day and night. But nature was no longer on their side. It had turned against them. From the shadows, Voran watched their every move. The scent of smoke and iron filled the air, angering him. He had lived through fire before. He had seen it take everything he loved. But this invasion felt personal. The forest silence was broken only by the creak of armor and the frightened neighing of horses. Even the birds had vanished. When the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, a lone soldier stumbled upon a trail of massive paw prints leading into the trees. He followed and disappeared. Hours later, his comrades found nothing but shredded armor and claw marks deep in the snow. Panic spread like frostbite. The general ordered the burning of the forest to flush the creature out. Torches lit up the tree-line, flames dancing wildly against the snow. But the soldiers didn't realize they were only making the beast stronger. The smoke masked Voran's scent, giving him cover. He moved like a ghost, his fur blending with the storm. That night, the first true battle began. Voran struck swiftly, tearing through tents, knocking down siege engines, and scattering men in every direction. The screams of terrified soldiers echoed through the night, mingling with the howling wind. They fired arrows and bullets, but the snowstorm swallowed their aim. To them, it was as if the forest itself had come alive to destroy them. By dawn, half their supplies were gone. The men refused to stay another day. But their general, proud and unrelenting, swore he would not retreat from a mere animal. What he didn't know was that Voran was no longer just a bear. He had become something greater, a symbol, a force born from every scar left by mankind's greed. The army prepared for one final stand. And deep within the storm, Voran waited, patient, silent, and ready. The storm had grown monstrous. By the third day, the battlefield was buried beneath walls of snow. What was once a proud army now looked like broken statues scattered across a frozen wasteland. Yet their commander, desperate for victory, refused to yield. He believed that killing the bear would restore his army's pride and perhaps his own fading sanity. At the center of their encampment, they built a massive wooden trap, reinforced with iron spikes, baited with the scent of blood and fire. The men waited, shivering behind their rifles, their eyes darting through the shadows. Each gust of wind sounded like a growl. Each flicker of flame reminded them of the creature that had haunted their nights. And then, through the blizzard, two golden eyes appeared. Voran, the bear of the north, emerged from the smoke and snow like a phantom. His fur was matted with frost, his body scarred from countless battles, but his presence was terrifyingly regal. Every step he took seemed to make the ground tremble. The soldiers fired, shouting through the chaos, but the storm devoured their gunfire. Bullets ricocheted off trees and armor, some hit their own men. Voran charged through the trap, his massive body smashing the iron spikes like twigs. In seconds, he was among them, tearing down barricades, flipping carts, scattering horses. The air filled with fire, blood, and roaring wind. The general drew his sword and stood his ground. He slashed once and missed. Voran's claws came down, shattering the man's weapon, and with one thunderous roar, he crushed the last symbol of man's domination over nature. The remaining soldiers fled into the storm, their torches dying in the snow. By morning, the camp was nothing but ruins, silent, smoldering, and reclaimed by the forest. The snow continued to fall, covering the scars of battle, as if nature itself wanted to erase what had happened. Voran stood on a ridge, his breath misting in the cold air, watching the sun rise over his homeland. The forest stretched endlessly before him, pure, untouched, alive. He had fought not out of vengeance, but to protect what was sacred. As the first light of day touched his fur, the great bear vanished into the white horizon. The legend of the beast that fought an army would echo through villages and across generations, a story whispered by firelight, reminding mankind that not all wars are meant to be won, and that some guardians are eternal.